Hello everyone. This is Clay Enos coming to you again with another video in the Automating Excel with Macros series. In this first video, we want to talk a lot about the Visual Basic Editor and how you set that up to enhance your programming experience. Well, first though, mention the fact that workbooks that contain macros have to have a different file type than the standard one. We'll talk about removing the irritating trust questions when you open up a macro workbook. And then we're going to talk about setting up the Visual Basic environment itself, the important windows or tabs that can be displayed, the color schemes that you can change, the programming modules which you can insert, and those are where you actually type in your various lines of code. And then we'll find out that even though we have a module to actually type in the lines of code, we're going to insert procedures, and they're going to either be what are called subroutines or functions, and we'll show you how you actually insert those. We'll actually define them in a lot more detail in a later video. So that's the agenda for this video, and so let's get started. And so if we look at this workbook, this is book 3, and it says Excel, which means that it's a standard workbook, Excel workbook. And if you go out and look, you'll see that it's an XLSW file. That's the extension. Used to be XLS, now it's XLSW, is the standard file format for an Excel worksheet or workbook. So if we go out and let's pretend like we've programmed some macros in there and we want to save this so we don't lose what we've done. If we click on the file menu and then scroll down and click on save as, we'll say browse because we're going to tell it where we want to do it at. And so if we go over here and look, you'll see that here is the standard workbook extension. But what we want to do is save it as a different extension. So the one that says XLSM, which is Excel Macro Enabled Workbook, is the particular style that we want to save it as. If you don't do this, then all that code that you've put in there will be lost when you exit out of Excel. So let's just do that now. And where we're going to put that is going to be in file. It's called course, and we're going to actually save it just for now here, and we'll call it test2.xlsm. And actually I don't have to type that in because it's there, but we'll do it anyway. So we save it. So now as I go through and make changes to my macros or insert new code, all I have to do is go ahead is a file save. I'm good to go. So that's the file type that's necessary in order to retain your macro code once you exit out of Excel. It's called a macro enabled Excel worksheet. Now there's another issue with that, and that is that since viruses can infect macros, or I should say macros could be viruses to infect your computer, Microsoft came up with a very strict way of allowing macros to be loaded and run, and that is basically you have to okay it each time you open up the workbook. However, that's irritating when you have a lot of things that you're programming and changing, and you're going back and forth and having to constantly tell everything it's okay, yes, I trust it, is a pain in the bazooki. So what we're going to do is show you there's a way that you can set up a specific directory that allows you to always open up macros that are saved in that directory and its subfolders without having to answer the question. It automatically is going to trust those macros if you load them from that directory. And so in order to be able to do that, what we have to do is we have to go to File, and we're going to go down to Options down here at the bottom. We hit Options, and then you'll see down at the bottom of here's a thing called Trust Center. So we need to click on Trust Center, and then once we're there, we want to do the Trust Center settings. And so now here is the list of all of the things that we want to be included in documents. So any of these directories, if I load a Excel macro worksheet, it's going to go ahead and or workbook, it's going to go ahead and load it and run it without asking me do I okay it, because it's coming from that specific directory. Now the one I want to save it in is the one called course, and you'll notice that it's already here, but just for the fun of it, let's remove that. And so now I want to add it back in again. So when you come here the first time, whatever directory you're going to save your macros that you're programming in, all we have to do is come down here and say add a new location. And that new location, I'm going to browse for it. And I'll come down and find out that it's under my documents directory, which is hiding right here. And there's a thing down here called course. And so actually I want just documents. I want to just highlight that course and say that's okay. And yes, I do want to allow the subfolders to be in there. You don't have to put a description in there. So I hit OK, and now it's loaded back up in here again. So now any macro enabled workbook, XLSM extension, that I load into Microsoft Excel, if it's in this directory or any of its subdirectories, it says, okay, it's good to go. It doesn't ask me those trust questions. And so now I can say, okay, and get out of here, and now I'm good to go. Whenever I load a macro, it's automatically going to run. It's really frustrating to load a macro enabled workbook, go out, and then you get ready and you try to do something and it won't run because it's not been trusted. And if you wait too long, the little menu that asks you, do you want to trust this file from this location, goes away, and so you have to close it and reopen it. It's kind of a pain in the rear. The next thing we'd like to talk about is actually setting up that Visual Basic environment. We'll show you how you open up and get into that. Real simple. We'll talk about the important windows first. To get into the Visual Basic editor, there are two ways that you can do that. The first is really easy, and that is you can go up to the developer tab that we enabled in that introductory video and go over here and just click Visual Basic. And when we click that, we open it up, and here's our Visual Basic editor. There's nothing in it at this juncture, and that's okay. But there's another way that you can also do it, and if you just kind of hover over here, you can see you hit Alt F11. And I use both of them. It just all depends on whether I'm in the developer tab. If I'm in the developer tab, I usually hit the Visual Basic icon. Otherwise, I just hit Alt F11. And so now, let me hit Alt F11. And so I'm back into the editor. Now, you'll notice that there are various tabs on project window, and it may be that these are not displayed when you first time you come into your Visual Basic editor. So if you want to display those, and you should, those two especially, you can go in and hit the View button and then come down and hit the Project Explorer and the Properties window. I do the Project Explorer first, and then you come down to View, and you can say Project Window, and Properties window, excuse me. And we can come over here and change the display of this, bring it down like this so that you can see it. And once we insert a module in a minute, you'll see that there's things that display over here that allow us to know certain features about the module or the programming environment that we're going to include. There's some other windows that you'll find very useful as time goes on. One of them is what's called the immediate window, and you can either just do this or you can hit any of these shortcut keys to open it up. So when you do that, that opens up this thing down here called the immediate window. It's real useful for making sure that you've typed in the command or the line of code correctly, and you can also check for intermediate results here. But the immediate window I have on all the kind, and you'll see if you click up here there's some other things that you can do. Now, to change the colors in the color scheme that the Visual Basic Editor uses to display various things, we can go into the Tools menu item and hit the Options, and you'll see a tab here that says Editor Format. Now, the way I recommend it is the way I have it here, but you can do it however you want. Normal text is displayed as black. Of course, the background doesn't matter. If you select text, you'll want to have a color that's so that you know it's selected, and I use yellow as you saw in the previous video. When you look at comments, I like doing comments in red, and then the keywords I like to set in blue. So once all that's set, and if you set that to start with, then any of the other things you change will automatically be that. So let's hit OK. Now we'd like to be able to type in some code, and we're going to be doing that in the next video to start with. But in order to be able to type in the code, we have to have some place to put things in. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to insert a sheet where we're going to be able to type in as many lines of code as we want, and those sheets in the Visual Basic Editor are called modules. And you can have more than one module in any particular workbook, and one module may work on one sheet, one module may work on one type of operations. It doesn't matter. You can put them all in one, but it's sometimes cool to break things up in different modules. But you still can't just type in code here. You still have to have some type of routine that actually runs in here. So if we go in and we say insert and say a procedure, here's all the different types of procedures. They can be either subroutines, they can be functions, or they can be properties. They can either be public or they can be private. So if I type the name of a, for example, subroutine, and I always start out with what I call a main subroutine. That's the one that controls the operation of the whole sheet usually, not always, but usually. And so if I hit OK, it'll insert that. And the reason why I recommend that you always do that rather than just typing these lines individually is that there's no typos. So if, for example, I didn't type the end sub exactly right, then it could cause a problem and an error when I try to execute the code. So always insert your procedures, whether it be a subroutine or a function, with this particular command, insert a procedure. So right now, we're ready to start actually programming some actual Visual Basic code. And that will be the subject of the next video.